I'm here to talk to you about a business opportunity that is real. And I'm not talking some pipe dream or something you have to have a major investment to get involved in. I'm talking about something that is a legitimate service, it's a legitimate business, and it can provide for you and your family for years to come. And you don't have to go borrow money or an elaborate amount of money to get started. Okay. Historically speaking, we've accepted and embraced concept that what we want to do is when we finish high school, we want to go into a 4-year college. We want to, move into the white collar area, move our way up, get a career, build a retirement, and retire one day. Well, times have changed, and there's a lot of misconception regarding college, particularly if you're taking a loan. If you're taking a student loan in order to be able to afford that 4-year degree, I would encourage you to do some research online. On YouTube has a video that jumps out to my mind called College Conspiracy, it's called. Go in there and take a look at that. A lot of people are getting themselves in real trouble trying to get that precious 4-year degree that's hyped up as their golden ticket to the middle class lifestyle that it's going to provide for us. Well, number one, it's not necessarily going to provide you that lifestyle anymore. The benefit of having a degree, a bachelor's degree, for example, was the fact that the vast majority of people did not, and suddenly you were differentiated in a positive way. Well, that's not the case any longer. So many people have their degrees, and now everybody's pushing for their master's or their doctorate or what have you. And the reason is competition has gotten more and more fierce in that area. Well, the areas that have been neglected are these blue-collar jobs, okay? Several successful corporate people who have their degrees have broken away and invested in their own business. And I know one, for example, who went into the auto lube industry, Lube Express. There's a number of franchises out there, but I don't know if he bought into one of the franchises or if he just did it himself, but that's what he does. He runs the business, manages his books, he takes care of his customers, and he's quite happy. He's reduced his stress and not having to live in that environment, and he's building his own future as opposed to leaning on a retirement structure that may or may not be there one day. We're not in the 50s and 60s anymore. We're far past that. So back to the service industry. One area that I find particularly opportunistic is one called HVACR. I've been in this industry for almost 30 years. HVACR stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration. And of course, now you know what I'm talking about. Well, if you stop and think about it, how many buildings are there around you right now? And how many buildings are there in your community? How many buildings do you drive by every day? And of those buildings, how many of them do not have a heating system in it or do not have air conditioning? How many places of business don't have refrigeration? I mean, if you walk into a restaurant, yeah, you see the booths and the tables and the waiting staff and everything else. But if you walk in that back room, you will see stainless steel everywhere. We're talking reach-in coolers, reach-in freezers, huge commercial grade ice machines, walk-in coolers, walk-in freezers, cooking equipment, ventilation where they exhaust all the fumes off, fresh air where they bring fresh air in to replace that air that's been sucked back out. There has to be when you pull air out, you got to put air back in. There's a whole process involved, and that equipment is very expensive. It's not like the refrigerated home that's considered an appliance and it's just disposable. These things require service, they require maintenance, and they require good, competent technical people to be available to take care of these units. Now, like a plumber or so many other electricians, so many other trades out there, this particular one pays very well, whether it's on residential for home heating and air conditioning systems or commercial or what have you. The point is there's a lot of opportunity, and historically speaking, as I mentioned, there's always been a deficit of good qualified people. Now, this is probably one of the easiest business to get into because so many people do it. If you've gone to the trade school and took about a year's worth of trades and you've got enough education to get out there and understand kind of what you're doing, you start getting a couple of years experience under your belt. Once you get to that point, you literally can break off on your own, assuming that you've taken the step to get the proper certifications and licenses, which is not that big of a deal. You usually do that anyway, or most of it, and they'll break off into going business for themselves. Now, the vast majority of self-employed heating and air conditioning contractors either work by themselves or they have less than 5 employees. And the vast majority of them, they work from their home. So how many businesses do you know of that you can literally work from your house and your office is in either a separate room in your house or a corner of a room in your house, and your shop is literally the garage, and your advertising, you can use the internet, you can use some local media, you can literally run a business right out of your home, and 6 figures is pretty easy to accomplish once you're up and running. It really is. If you don't mind working, it absolutely is quite possible and actually more probable than you would imagine. Now, it does take the skill set to do that. It does take the experience and knowledge, but since it's so easy to get involved in, most people, they acquire the trade skills, but they don't acquire the business training. And see, that's where you really got to be careful, because the vast majority of people that go into this business, they fail. They fail because they don't have the training, they don't have the guidance. They'll get in there and they have money in the bank and they assume it's theirs to spend, and they'll spend themselves into a hole and then ultimately file bankruptcy or what have you. I've seen it happen many, many times. In fact, 7 out of 10 businesses fail within the first 10 years. And of those that make it, a good 60 or 70% of them fail within the next 10 years. It requires a discipline just like anything else. But once you know the rules, once you know how to properly price and understand your figures and what you need to charge for your services, it's not really that complicated. But this is a wonderful industry. It is work, but it's not like, I used to work on my car a little bit when I was a kid, or I tried to. You come out with grease and grime under your nails and everything else. There's a raw satisfaction that comes from that. But to do it every day with the grease and the grime and rolling in that stuff, for me, it was a bit of a turnoff. Now, interestingly enough, I became a mechanic of a different type, and I worked in the heating and air conditioning as a mechanic, but it was a much, much cleaner work. I had to climb up on roofs, it was a ladder, or I had to get into mechanical rooms, or in some cases into an attic or a crawl space beneath the house. But generally speaking, the work itself was pretty clean. It gets dusty, but it's not that greasy, grimy grit that gets all, like an automotive repair. I'm not knocking automotive, because that is another tremendous opportunity for, the entrepreneur. But this type of business here, the HVACR business, you can work at the one-man level, you can work at 2, 3, 4 employees, or like I did, you can grow and have, I grew to the point where I had about 14 employees at one point, and that seemed to be about the right size for me. We did rather well, and it prepared me for the paths that I took after that. Now, I would encourage you to look at that as a possible avenue. If it's of interest to you, check out my link below. What I do is I train people in the business side, the marketing side, how to set up your pricing, what key performance indicators are. Key performance indicators, for example, are template numbers that a successful heating and air conditioning refrigeration company would strive to achieve in every area of their business. Okay, so we kind of know what your overhead should be, percentage to sales, for example, or we know what your advertising budget should be, percentage to sales. We know what your salary, what kind of salary you should be drawing out of the company based on how much money your company's taking in. These are the types of figures that we can kind of use as a guideline to help you. What it does, it just helps you avoid the pitfalls that so many of these contractors break off. And like I said, the vast majority, 9 out of 10 heating and air conditioning guys that break out on their own, they do fail. Quite honestly, because they're not prepared. I was not prepared, but I was fortunate enough to be exposed to some of the best gurus in the industry and learn things, and it was quite humbling to see how a proper business should be ran and how it is run. Now, on the upside, corporate America is not messing with heating and air conditioning. They tried to go into it years ago, and they did what's called consolidation, in which these mega companies went through and they bought up these successful heating and air conditioning companies throughout the country, and they put them all under one brand, one name, and they went out there and they tried to run this thing. Well, guess what? They failed miserably. It's a tough business for corporate America. They cannot compete. It's just perfect for the small operation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals working collectively as a group. There's some really great benefits and advantages and what have you in keeping it small. So corporate America's tried through the consolidation efforts. So they did fail, and now they're trying through retail outlets by using companies such as yourself, if you own a business, and buying your service at wholesale so that they can mark it up and make retail off of it. And there are contractors that are out there dabbling in that. I personally was not interested when I was in business, but you'll see some big retail box names out there that are promoting heating and air conditioning, and they'll run it right through their register, and the big box retail outlet will get their cut, and then the contractor is going to work at his margin. And you end up, you the consumer, for example, will end up paying more for that type of work than you would if they dealt with somebody, say like yourself, if you owned your own business, right? So it's a great business. Give me a look. Just click the link below. Thanks.